For the best prices and service on Pokemon TCG singles and products, check out ccgcastle.com and use promo code Evolutionaries-5 for 5% off your next order.
What's up, guys? And for today's Deck Tech Thursday, I'll be profiling for you guys my Ho-Oh Salazzle deck. Now, this is actually a deck I've been wanting to profile for a while, but I've just been messing around with lists online just to see which one worked for me the best, and I think I finally come up with one. Like, it's a very powerful deck overall, and it did get a little bit more powerful with Ultra Prism, so definitely a deck to be reckoned with in the current meta. So let's go over it. Gonna start off here with 3 copies of Ho-Oh EX. It is 190 basic fire type Pokemon. And unlike most fire, it's weak to electric instead of water, and there's not too much electric out there right now. So it's very hard to one-shot Ho, especially the fact that it's fighting resistant too, which is a really huge thing. So both its attacks are pretty decent. We're not going to worry about the GX attack here because it's literally it's not very applicable in this deck. So sacrifice first 1 fire, 2 colors, does 50 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon. Not too bad. But the main one we'll be focusing on is Phoenix Burn. For 3 fire and a color, does 180 damage, and its Pokemon can't use Phoenix Burn during the next turn. Of course, there are ways to boost up that damage, and even though it says you can't use it next turn, we have plenty of ways around that. Much easier now, actually. Alright. Next up here, I run 2 copies of Salandit, along with 2 copies of Salazzle GX. Now, Salazzle GX overall is just a really good tech fire Pokemon to have as a secondary attacker, because all of its attacks are pretty decent. Like, you'll be using Queen's Haze GX much more than you would ever use Ho-Oh's GX attack. Diabolical Claws is really good for late game, does 50 damage for each prize card you have taken, so end game, that attack can just sweep. 2 fire energy is 110, they're all 2 fire energy cost. So yeah, 2 fire, 110, that's not bad. No other effects there, but for just 2 energy, that's pretty cheap to be doing a decent amount of damage. And Queen's Haze, you discard all energy from your opponent's active Pokemon, so it's a really annoying disruptor against your opponent. Alright, next up I run 1 copy of Dawnwing's Necrozma from the new Ultra Prism set. Well, I shouldn't say new, it's new-ish. So this is the thing I was telling you about that really helps out this deck. Because Phoenix Burn says you can't use that attack during the next turn, but what you could do is use Invasion to put your Dawnwings in the active, retreat into your Ho, and then Phoenix Burn resets so you could use it again immediately. So really, really good, much easier to pull off consistent Phoenix Burns. Because before you had to use like Floatstones, Guzmas, and I mean you still play those in the deck, but you had to like it was very complicated, much harder to do than it is now. I mean, it's much easier now, thanks to Dawnwings. And of course, we have 3 copies of Tapu Lele, just search supporters, very obvious. And last but not least, I run 1 copy of Alolan Vulpix, just for those times where we get a bad start and we just need to search out Pokemon. That's what we got Vulpix for. And that will wrap it up for my Pokemon lineup. And now for our supporter lineup. Actually, quite a few in this deck. So I'm going to be running 4 copies of Cynthia. Probably the best draw in the game we have right now. So definitely want to max out on that. I also run 2 copies of N and 2 copies of Sycamore. Just because these are still staples, even though they're not 4 of staples anymore because of Cynthia. They are still cards you need to have in a deck because Hand Disruption, and you still do draw more off this than you would from Cynthia, especially if you have a low hand or no hand. Alright, next up is 2 copies of Bridget. Very, very standard, just about every deck you play helps fill up your bench. And one of the bonus supporters we play here is 2 copies of Kiawe. Now what Kiawe does, you can search your deck for up to 4 fire energy cards and attach them to one of your Pokemon, but your turn automatically ends after that, which is completely fine because let's say you go second on your first turn, you have a Ho-Oh out here, just attach a fire energy to another Pokemon, maybe a Salandit you have on the bench or another Ho-Oh, then play Kiawe, fill this up to 4, and boom. Even if you go first, especially that would be even better, but regardless, on your first turn, whether you go first or second, you have a pretty decent setup with Kiawe. next up is going to be 3 copies of Guzma, very obvious staple. Not to mention, for those times where you're not able to get out your Dawn Wings, this does help you like switch out of another ho-oh to another ho-oh possibly, or something that has a low or free retreat cost. Because I do run Floatstone in this deck, so even though we have Dawn Wings to help with that, again, it's always good to have a backup. Not to mention, it's Guzma. Guzma's too good. And last but not least, 1 copy of Gladian, just to be able to search our prizes, because more often than not, regardless of the version I played, I always ended up prizing something really important, and just playing that got me that 1 card I needed for game more times than not. So that will do it for our supporter lineup. And now for our items. 4 copies of Ultra Ball, very, very standard. Like, I hope this card never goes out of rotation. It doesn't look like it ever will, because with how many times it's been reprinted. Alright, next up, also very important in this deck would be 4 copies of Max Elixir, because we want ho-ohs powered up as quickly as humanly possible. So we got everything, and we have Kiawe, we got Max Elixir, anything we need to give us a little bit of boost. Alright. Next up, I run 3 copies of Fighting Fury Belt. And the reason I run Fury Belt over Choice Band is because, yeah, it boosts up to 190, and I know it's not going to knock out everything in the game currently, but I think that having the extra health for ho-oh is a little bit more important. Not to mention this applies to everything, not just EXs and GXs. So, not to mention the choice band will only boost us up to 210. Yep, 210, and even though that does give you a little more wider variety, it doesn't one-shot everything in the game. So 190 still one-shots a good amount of things, and it gives you extra health. So that's my honest reasoning behind it. Next up is going to be 2 copies of Floatstone, mainly for our Dawn Wings Necrozma, so we get Invasion and Retreat for free. But it can also be used for ho-ohs, our Salazzle if needed, Tapu Lele, just an extra way to get our Pokemon out of the active. Alright, and next up is going to be 2 copies of Field Blower. Very obvious, we don't want our opponent to have tools in stadiums. Not to mention, we really don't like Garbodor. I mean, Garbodor isn't as big of a problem with this deck, I'll admit. But we still don't want our ability shut down overall. No deck does. And next up, 2 copies of Palpat just to help recycle our supporters. Because you go through supporters more quickly than you would think in this deck. Because you just want to play as fast as possible. So, all the ways to recycle are definitely good. And last up for our items is going to be 1 copy of Super Rod and 1 copy of Rescue Stretcher. Just to recycle our Pokemon and energy. And I only play 2 stadiums in this deck. And 1 of each 2. I play 1 Scorched Earth and 1 Altar of the Sun. Now, Altar of the Sun is mainly for our Salazzle to protect it from against water, because there's a lot of water out there. But even though I said electric isn't very popular, it's not completely non-existent either, because Raichu with Pachirisu has been seeing some play recently, and I'm not just including for Professor K's deck. But in general, it has seen a little bit of play. And not to mention, electric could be making its return fairly soon in the meta, within the next set or 2. So definitely not a bad stadium to have. And Scorched Earth, just because it's amazing, it's extra draw, because we run a lot of fire energy in here, and we're definitely gonna have times where we have more fire energy in our hand that we know what to do with. So Scorched Earth is definitely a good call as well. You could definitely replace Altar of the Sun with a second Scorched Earth if you would like. I just like to have the option to have one or the other. And last up is going to be, of course, our fire energy. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 fire energy. I feel about 10 to 12 is standard for a ho-oh deck. Personally, I feel you would always have to go anywhere between those numbers. Just because, again, we need a lot of fire energy to do a lot of awesome things. And that does it for the deck profile, guys. Hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you're new to the channel. And come back tomorrow for Battle Frontier Friday, where I go up against Professor K. And who knows, maybe my win streak can continue. Hopefully so. All right, guys, see you all tomorrow. Take care. Have a fantastic day.